Hi guys, welcome to this presentation on next level backsides, rethinking backside cues. In this presentation we want to discuss the direction-based handling system or direction-based backside system, which is becoming more and more popular in Europe. What you will learn today, we will take a look at the most frequent mistakes that people do when teaching backsides. What does the direction-based system mean in relation to the handler-based system? So it's often used as a term, but maybe not 100% clear for everyone. So I wanted to take some time to look at it. What are the pros and cons for each of these systems? And then how should you decide for a system? Also, what is important if you would decide to retrain your dog to the direction-based system? Okay, but first of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Anna Hinze. I live in Hanover in Germany. I studied psychology and educational science and technology, but right after finishing my degrees, I went self-employed and founded Agility Campus. And ever since, I am teaching online courses and live seminars in agility. I own 2 border collies and 2 shelties at the moment. And I am a travel lover and love to travel the world and explore agility in other countries. And right now I'm actually streaming to you from Greece, from my caravan. Okay, so 5 common mistakes when teaching the backsides. First, poor jumping technique. So very often the jumping technique is not taken into account when teaching backsides. But it is a very important part of the whole backside routine. So we see quite a lot of dogs touching wings or knocking bars or having a poor landing spot and really hitting the ground like this because they were thinking it would be maybe a slice and then it's actually a wrap. So they land and then they slip, and this is a very big risk for injury. So it's very important to focus on jumping technique when talking about backsides. Second one is that the backside is taught to be dependent on the handler. So the handler pushes the dog actively to the backside of the jump and then can't leave, which means they get a little bit trapped or stuck, and it really decreases their speed, the handler speed on course. Then missing directions. The dog maybe doesn't understand where to continue after the backside. So they can't accelerate as fast if they don't know if they are going left or right, or if they are slicing or wrapping a wing. And it can also lead to a poor landing position again. Too much physical help in training is what I often see, again pushing the dog to the backside and not basing the training on understanding, but basing it on handling, which is very hard to fade later on. And the last one is a missing link to real courses. If we only train the skill on one jump all the time and not discriminate it against other cues or other obstacles, then we are not training for reality. And then the step into a real course, a real sequence, may be too big. So we really want a system here to help us bridge the gap between the understanding and the training at home and having it in a real course. Okay, so now let's take a look at the handler-based versus the direction-based system. First, here are the handler-based backside cues. In the top row, I have the general name for the handling maneuver. And here in the bottom row, I have my verbal cue so that you can see which are the same. So this is my old system, what is very frequently still used by people. We have a backside wrap this way, its cue is außen. Backside wrap the other wing, same cue, außen. Although we see it's a different movement. Here it's a left turn, here it's a right turn. Both times the handler pushes the dog. Then we have backside slice, also außen. Totally different takeoff spot, totally different landing spot. Still same cue. Then we have throttle wrap. My cue is yo. No matter which side the handler is on. The handler pulls the dog behind, cue is yo. And now when we take a look, this dog line here is exactly the same as this dog line here. It's only the handler position that changes. So in the direction-based system, these would be the same cues. So let's take a look. Here we focus more on left wing versus right wing. So we have a push to the left wing. For me, the verbal cue is push. And then here we have a pull to the left wing. But the same movement pattern for the dog. So same cue, push. Here we have push to the right wing. Cue is flick. Here we have pull to the right wing. Also cue is flick. Same movement pattern, same verbal cue. Only the position of the handler is different, but we don't care about this in this system. We only look what the dog is doing. And then we have außen, which is the backside S line. And this one for me is still handler based. I don't have it direction based because I didn't want to make it overly complicated. So I feel like with the S line, it's very logical for the dog and often a very logical handler position. So I didn't feel the need to make this direction based yet. Maybe it will change in the future, but for now I'm happy with this. Okay, now let's take a look at the pros and cons. So the handler-based system, we have the pros that it works very well if the dog is very focused on the handler. So it means the dog that's looking a lot at the handler anyways will benefit from handler-based backside cues, or not benefit, but it will be more intuitive. So it can feel intuitive for a very handler-focused dog because he's looking at the handler all the time. And this means it's easier to teach the system to the dog and maybe also easier for beginning handlers who don't have a lot of experience because it feels intuitive to have one cue for pushing and one for pulling, and then we don't need to think about left and right. Also, this is commonly used with a lot of traditional trainers. So if you go to different trainers, it's very likely that they will know the system. The cons, the dog must always keep an eye on the handler, so we have less independence because the dog is checking, am I being pulled or pushed? Which side of the jump do I need to go? It's less effective at greater distances and in very fast sequences. When a lot of things are happening in a very quick succession, the dog doesn't have a lot of time to make decisions. So the traditional system is a little more complicated for the dog because he has to check with the handler where the handler position is. And it can lead to confusion if the handler moves unexpectedly or the dog didn't check in time where the handler is. Then we have a higher risk of injury because the dog could be uncertain or make a decision and then the handler changes sides and then this decision is not the correct one anymore. In the direction-based system, the dog learns to focus on the wing rather than on the handler, which means he's looking at the line, so he's looking where he's going basically, and not looking at the handler and very late deciding on a line. So the risk of injury is lowered. We have the same cues for the same movements. This is a very big advantage in my opinion because this means that there is a chance for the movement patterns to become really ingrained in the brain with muscle memory. So the dog will always do a left turn on the right wing on the cue flick. So eventually he won't have to think anymore what he has to do with his body on this verbal cue. It's automatically programmed in his brain, and this program will run. If we have the same cue, like my old Außen cue, for different movements, then there's always a thinking process involved, which takes some brain space and maybe also some time, because it keeps the dog from committing early to the new line. So this allows for better commitment and understanding, because it's a subconscious process when it is trained well. And then it works better at distance and in high-speed sequences, where the dog needs to make fast decisions. Also, we have some cons. Of course, it requires an adjustment period if the dog was previously trained in the old system. It is possible to retrain, but of course, both handler and dog have to adjust. It's also possible to retrain ourselves as handlers. Maybe in the coursework, we have to spend some more time thinking actively which cue is it that we do need to use now, what is the left wing, what is the right wing. But it's totally possible, and it will become more and more intuitive for the handler as we continue to use it. Also, this system needs a systematic and precise training approach, otherwise it won't be reliable. So it's not something that you can train 3 times and then start using, or at least you shouldn't. You should spend some thoughtful training on it and some well-structured training. It does require initially more training effort to establish, but it will pay off in the long run. So now, which system should we choose? For the traditional handler-focused system, we often have to be closer to the dog for it to work well. So it's a better system for fast handlers. If we are fast handlers and can be everywhere, then the advantages of the direction-based system are not so big, and the handler system may be totally enough. It can be unclear in layering situations and at a distance. So the more layering we want to do, the more distance handling we want to do, the more sense it makes to have a direction-based system. And we have the same cues for different movement patterns, which is confusing for some dogs and can lead to bar knocking. So if we have a dog that is knocking bars, especially on the back sides, it's maybe worth considering changing the system. The direction-based system has the same cues for the same movement patterns, so we have improved jumping and better commitment and better understanding. Better understanding also at a distance, and we have greater independence from the handler because the dog immediately knows what to do. He has an earlier obstacle focus, so it's a very good system for slower handlers and for distance handlers, and also it's more clear in layering situations. Okay, now if you want to retrain your dog or train it from scratch, what's important here? So we want to base the system or the new system on understanding, so not on physical cues. From the beginning, we want to be very clear on as minimal physical cues as possible, because they will be hard to fade later on. We also want to pay attention to the jumping technique, because implementing a correct movement from the beginning is always the best way to go. If we want to fix the movement later on, especially if the dog has been jumping in a not so efficient way for years, it can be very challenging. So it's very important to pay attention to jumping technique from the beginning. However, it is totally possible if we retrain with a new verbal cue that we can fix a poor jumping technique much better than retraining the same system. So if we want to switch from handler-based to direction-based system, we can use new verbal cue, and we have a higher chance of the dog adapting to the new jumping technique more quickly. We also want discrimination with other cues to improve the generalization and help the dogs understand what is the new behavior and what is not. And we want structured training to not forget any steps and also to avoid frustration for the dog and the handler